A Roman army camp, 150 AD. A man on a wooden table, spear wound to the thigh, deep enough that you can see what's inside a human leg and wish you couldn't. Two soldiers hold his shoulders, not because he's fighting them, because what comes next will make him. The torch above throws yellow light across the table, and across the surgeon's hands, and across the face of the man who is trying very hard not to show what his face is showing. The surgeon picks up a bronze scalpel, opens the wound wider. The torch behind him throws his shadow across the table, then reaches for a small clay flask, pours it in. The man's back leaves the table. Both hands find the wood. Every muscle fires at once. He doesn't scream, but his face says everything screaming would have said. The surgeon doesn't look up. Thread, needle, next man. 3 days later, that soldier walks out. 1863, Pennsylvania. A tobacco barn that smells of things tobacco never smelled of. You made it off the field. Bullet passed through clean. You're on a cot. The bleeding has stopped. The man next to you says the worst surgeons here are still better than nothing, and you believe him because you're alive, and the alternative was the field. You can hear flies somewhere. You can hear someone 2 cots down trying not to make noise and failing. The barn smells of hay and sweat, and something underneath both of those that you don't think about. You think the worst is over. The surgeon comes, been at this since dawn. His coat was brown this morning. It isn't now. He looks at your wound, reaches for his instruments, moves to the next man. He does not wash his hands between you. 6 days later, you have a fever. 8 days later, the wound has a smell. 10 days later, your family gets a letter. 60%. Not from the fighting, from the table, from the hands, from the coat. The answer was sitting in a clay flask 17 centuries earlier on the other side of the world. A Roman fortress housed 5,000 men and 1 hospital. Stone rooms, drainage channels in the floor, running water from the aqueduct before the first patient arrived. A staff of trained surgeons who moved between units, kept records, and knew which treatments worked because they had watched enough men to know. Not a barn, not a field, not improvised, built before the war started, because someone already knew what happened when you didn't. The popular answer, Roman medicine was primitive, got lucky. Antibiotics are what actually made surgery safe. That's wrong. 1847, Vienna. A surgeon named Semmelweis watched women die. 18 out of every 100 on his ward. He washed his hands between patients. The number dropped to 1. He showed his colleagues. They told him he was wrong. He spent the next decade watching wards kill women they didn't have to kill. He wrote papers, sent them to journals, stood in lecture halls and laid out the numbers and watched his colleagues look away. Rewrote the paper, sent it again, visited other wards, counted more bodies, went back to the lecture halls. Some accounts say toward the end he stopped strangers on the street because he knew exactly what was killing them and nobody listened. He ended up in an asylum at 47, died there, likely from the same infection that had killed his patients while his colleagues kept their hands as they were. The irony was so complete it sounds invented. 16 years later, the barns in Pennsylvania filled up. So how did men walking out of Roman surgical tents in 150 AD survive something that killed 60% of men in the most advanced medical system the world had yet built? Pick it up. Lighter than you expect. Pull the cork and the smell hits before you're ready. Sharp, acidic. The kind that makes you pull your face back before you decide to. That's posca, vinegar and water, what every Roman soldier drank, what every Roman surgeon poured. 3 to 5% acetic acid, kills what turns a wound septic within 48 hours. The surgeon didn't know that. He knew something simpler. He'd watched what happened to wounds he treated with it, and wounds he didn't. Watched it across a year, across 10 years, across a career of wooden tables and bronze scalpels, and men who walked out, and men who didn't. One group walked out. The other didn't always. That's it. No theory, no understanding. Just 10,000 observations across 3 centuries encoded into a requirement. Vegetius wrote it down in the 4th century, Posca as standard surgical supply. Not optional. Same rule, every legion, every frontier, every generation after. Modern wound care reintroduced the same compound, 17 centuries later. Same compound. The Romans got there first by watching men die and refusing to forget what they saw. Now you're on that table. Spear wound, thigh, deep. Been here 2 hours. Bleeding slowed. You think the hard part is done. The surgeon reaches for the flask. You don't know what's in it. The burning starts before it fully touches the wound. Back leaves the table. Hands find the wood. Jaw locks. You breathe through your nose because that's all you can manage, and the soldiers at your shoulders lean in because they've seen this before, and they know exactly what your face is about to do. He doesn't explain. Thread. Needle. Done. Somewhere in that burning, something is dying that would have killed you. The man in the next tent was treated with water drawn from the river the horses drink from. His wound looked fine for 2 days. 3rd day, a warmth spreading from the edges. Not pain, just heat, like the wound had developed its own pulse. 4th day, fever. 5th day, smell. 7th day, the surgeon came back, looked at the wound, said nothing. Nothing left to say. Posca was in your wound. His air was already in yours. Novasium, Germany. Archaeologists dug it up in the 1890s. 60 recovery rooms, each one its own window, its own drain. 1 or 2 patients, no more. Same layout across dozens of sites. Britain, North Africa, Syria. The same room everywhere, 300 years. You're in one now. Stone walls, window pulling cold air across you, wound stitched, wrapped. No coughing 3 feet from your ear. No fever talk at 2 in the morning. No smell that isn't yours. Quiet in a way a barn full of 40 men is never quiet. The man with the gangrene is down the corridor. His breath is not in your air. His rot is behind a wall that doesn't care how badly he's doing. You don't know why that matters. You just know the wound is cooler in the morning than it was the night before. And the morning after that, cooler still. On the 4th day, you sit up without help. On the 6th day, you eat. In a Pennsylvania barn, he's on the cot next to yours, close enough to touch. His infection is in your air before it's in your flesh. You don't feel it happening. You feel the fever 3 days later, the smell 4 days after that. And then you understand what the smell means because you've been in this barn long enough to know what the smell means. The surgeon tried to save you, did everything his training told him to do. His training was wrong. 1867, Joseph Lister, carbolic acid, sterilized instruments, isolated patients. Death rates fell from 45% to 15% in 4 years. He had to fight his own profession every step. The British Army took another decade. The Romans had stone walls and a floor drain. Same outcome, 17 centuries earlier. Some historians say coincidence, standard fort construction. Others look at 3 continents, 300 years, the same room everywhere, and see something deliberate. Both have evidence. Where do you land? Celsus, Medical Encyclopedia, 25 AD. Surgeon washes before every procedure, not after, before. Water on the hands, Pasca on the instruments, into the room. That order, every time. No record of anyone asking why, no record of anyone skipping it. Just the sequence, running the same way it had always run, in every fort, on every frontier, for 300 years. If you've ever worked anywhere contamination kills, a kitchen, a field dressing station, a surgical unit, you know what that means. The team that runs the sequence because that's what you do is more reliable than the team that runs it because they understand it. Understanding can be argued. Habit can't. Semmelweis understood, had the numbers, had the proof. Stood in front of his colleagues and the proof didn't matter because they argued it until he had nothing left, and the wards kept filling and the letters stopped coming back. He died. His patients kept dying. The Roman surgeon understood nothing, had a sequence, passed down from the surgeon before him, and before that, across 3 centuries of frontier postings, ran it every time. The men walked out, a clay flask, a stone room, clean hands before the first cut. No theory. Each one held what the previous one built, and together they held for 3 centuries because they were never ideas. They were done, every day, without exception. Whether anyone was watching, whether the surgeon was experienced or green, confident or afraid, whether the fort was on the Rhine or the Nile or the edge of Scotland in the rain. The sequence ran because the sequence always ran. 1863 had better ideas. The Romans had living men. If what brings you here is the real story, not Hollywood legions, not textbook timelines, but how these people solved problems that defeated civilizations with more knowledge and more resources, then this channel was built for you. Subscribe and you'll be here for what comes next. The next time you watch a surgeon scrub before an operation, consider this. Northern Germany, a stone room, 14 centuries before Semmelweis was born. A Roman camp surgeon poured Pasca over his instruments and washed his hands in cold aqueduct water. Couldn't explain it. Didn't need to. Knew it kept his men alive the same way the surgeon before him knew it. Passed hand to hand, 3 centuries, no explanation ever given, and none ever asked for. Nobody wrote it down as a theory. Nobody needed to. It lived in the hands, in the sequence, in the 10,000 mornings when a surgeon reached for the flask before he reached for anything else. Water first, Pasca second, then the cut. That flask is dust. That room is a ruin. But the sequence never changed.